Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by author and economic analyst, here I am, John Sneisen, and I thought we'd go over a few quick things today just about the people out there that make economic predictions down to the date. Now, a lot of these people are brilliant minds. They're right if the fundamentals were set in stone. However, economics doesn't work like the fundamentals anymore, does it, John? I mean, we see with a lot of what's happening, the markets are so overly manipulated that it's impossible to predict exact dates.
Yeah, no, I would say that economics have really died completely over the last 10-15 years. And there's nothing left anymore that actually resembles any type of a freeness in the market whatsoever. What we talked about, there hasn't been a free market for over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we look at, the whole system in itself and central planning when it comes down to it, and the desperacy to keep a system going. Now, I've seen this, so many times by reading history books about the French Revolution, about, China and others, that, they just continued to manipulate as long as they could. But the thing was, they didn't have the tools that these central planners had today. Which is electronic, manipulation, which is so fast, and they could, intervene so fast and go and, do things to prop up things and make it look good, but it's definitely not. It's like the mortgage market is terrible in many markets.
Yeah.
We did videos on Vancouver. Vancouver's struggling now, guys. And then also in Norway, there's been videos coming out lately in the major Norwegian newspaper saying, like, can this real estate market keep on going up? Yeah. And then it's funny when you look at the people that said that they are going to go up, it's the actual realtors and the central bank.
Yeah.
Well, because, they work together. Realtors need a job, so they need to continuously sell houses, and the central planners need to keep them employed, because if they're starting to get unemployed, the market will normally crash. And so they just keep on lowering the rates on their interest. But then on top of that, they started to, manipulate assets as well, going to stock markets, going to different funds, going to real estate, derivatives, everything. They're buying up massive amounts of things, and it's a complete failure. But people are saying, well, they should, end up on this date, because looking at this chart, this technical chart, it totally makes sense that it's there. But then, time and time again, what have happened over the last 5 years now since the crash, the 8 years since the crash, is that those technical charts have started to diverge. Yeah. And people are saying, well, they can't really fathom, and they want, people want certainty. They want to be able to say, this date, that's when it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Human, when it comes to us as a human, we don't like uncertainty at all. No. And we want certainty, so we want to put something on something and say, this is when it's going to happen. Absolutely.
It's totally human nature. And I find it's interesting because we get a lot of comments, for example, on our Vancouver housing market crash video. They're saying, well, people have been predicting for so many years that the Vancouver housing market's going to crash. You're right, they have. And due to a lot of the people's predictions, because they believed in the fundamentals instead of understanding the level of manipulation, they have made the wrong predictions. And a lot of these people are right if it were up to fundamentals, but that's not the way it is. We see so many people saying it's going to happen on September 1st, it's going to happen on July 5th, all this kind of stuff, and then they get discredited, even though they're right. However, they're not acknowledging the vast amount of manipulation in the markets. I mean, the markets today, they're all manipulation. That's all it is. Debt manipulation and, monopolies. It's unbelievable. But again, I mean, and we've made, I think, somewhat of a mistake with this in the past ourselves, I do believe, saying, well, it looks, all the trends point to this day, so this is going to happen on that day. That's just not how it works. And I mean, there's brilliant minds out there that say these kinds of things, and my message to them is just stop. Explain how the monetary system works, explain how it doesn't work for that matter, explain how it's enslaving us, as John's book points out, but don't say on this day this is going to happen, because happens, then you're going to dig yourself deep and people won't listen to you anymore because it won't happen necessarily on that day. We'll see certain fluctuations in the markets for sure on that day. You might be right to that extent, but the level of manipulation is impossible to predict. It's just totally impossible.
Yeah, and that's one of the major reasons why I wrote in my book. I wrote, when you read this book, you probably might see this have happened or is happening.
Yeah.
Because I have no clue. I know throughout looking at fundamentals, right? Mm-hmm. I can see it's coming, but if I put a date on it, well, these manipulators, they'll manipulate and then say, like, oh, you were wrong.
Yeah, I think the only people that really know exactly what dates these things are gonna come down, at least to a general idea of it, are the manipulators themselves.
Not even them. I think today, to be honest with you, Josh, I don't think they even have a clue themselves how long they can keep this. Because all that it is, it's a trust game. And as soon as we stop trusting these manipulated numbers and buying into it every single time, that's when stuff is gonna probably start to happen.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, we see Jacob Rothschild buying up all this gold. We see so many people, the elitists, going towards blockchain because they know that a lot of that is the future, and that's about as far as it goes. But as for saying, okay, well, we see some real instability in the markets, which the markets are always unstable because they're always manipulated. They go, well, okay, well, on this date it's going to happen, and it just never turns out that way. It discredits a lot of us, and the people out there that are just trying to get the information on how the monetary system works and how it will inevitably crash and fail. Just like all fiat money over history has crashed, all paper money will revert to zero eventually. But to say, well, on this day, the dollar is going to hit nothing, it's going to be worthless, hyperinflation will set in. We know things like that are on the books for the future, but you just can't say that it's going to happen at this time, because that's just when there's new people coming into it and just starting to learn, and then they see that you were incorrect about the exact day, they'll stop watching you instantly right there. They'll say, well, you're discredited, you're a loon. Even if all the things they're saying around that date were right, they will say, well, that you are totally discredited, so I'm going to stop watching you. And that drives a lot of people away. And we need as many people as possible to stand up to these globalist, centrally planning scumbags that are collectivizing us into groups to plunder us and throw us into debt enslavement.
Yeah. And I think also the thing comes with media as well today. You know, they're really pushing, on these people to get something out because they want to have a big story, like this is the time, it's going to happen at this exact date. I think we have to stop with that too, because we are almost discrediting certain aspects of even alternative media by letting that happening. And, it's great to want to have those huge stories, but it's also another thing to say to people, well, this is a huge story, this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
But we can't predict the exact date because it's impossible.
It's totally impossible. Like we've mentioned a few times, with fundamentals it would make sense, but it doesn't make sense as it stands today under the vast amount of manipulation. I don't want to sound like a broken record or anything. I just think it's worth mentioning because it's been hurting us. It's been hurting us a lot. There have been so many great minds out there.
It's a lot of fatigue.
And you're absolutely right, John, about the way, like, you can get, if I were to put up a video that says silver is going to skyrocket to $1 million an ounce and gold is going to skyrocket to 10 million an ounce and something like that, or the markets will crash on September 15th, up until that date I'll get a lot of viewers.
Oh yeah.
However, then you're just instantly discredited. So this is why we need to think about these issues and talk about how they affect us, how it will eventually crash, but don't set dates, people. That's the whole point of this report. Just don't set dates. Be vigilant about it. Be able to explain the problems that we see, the collectivist control of us as individuals into enslavement. Talk about that. Just leave the dates out of it, folks. If you say next year sometime, that might be a bit better because that makes more sense, but you still don't know that with a level of manipulation. These elitists are always surprising us with new tricks, and they do everything they possibly can to prop up a dead animal. It's like finding a carcass on the road, as I think I mentioned to John before, finding a carcass on the road and stuffing it. It might be dead, but it's still standing, and that's what we see with so many of these, what I kind of call zombie markets. They're dead, but they're living.
They're not willing to lose. That's it.
Absolutely. So thank you again, John. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Thank you.